meeting could please hit your button. Red means you're on and live, and that will help us be audible in the room and also for our guests at home. So my name is Bob Crum. I'm the Executive Director here of the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization and the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission.
There we go. Martin Thomas, Vice Mayor, City of Norfolk.
Dorian Allen, Strategic Transportation Planner for the City of Norfolk.
Lisa Simpson, Transportation at City of Newport News. Leslie Dobbins Noble, Army Corps of Engineers.
George Janik, Army Corps of Engineers, Regulatory Branch.
Mitzi Crystal VDOT.
Good morning or good afternoon. Angela A. Fonponsa, VDOT, Hampton Roads District, Assistant District Planner.
Todd Nichols, Deputy Director at the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance.
Rick Dwyer, Executive Director at FARUMPA.
Chief Jones, Devastation, Norfolk.
Angela Rico, City of Newport News.
Mayor Philip Jones, Newport News.
Donnie Tuck, Hampton.
Rick Lohman, City of Virginia Beach, City Traffic Engineer.
Drew Eisenberger, Chesapeake, City Traffic Engineer.
Jason Souders, City of Suffolk, Traffic Engineering Manager.
Mike Dimion, Suffolk Mayor.
Joe Strange with Michael Baker.
Paul Credo with Michael Baker.
Lorna Parkins with Michael Baker.
Camelia Ravenbach, the Regional Connector Study Project Coordinator.
Thank you, one, and thank you all.
Excuse me, did you say who you are?
Pardon?
Did you say who you are?
Yeah. Oh, I am Bobby D., part-time
Okay.
city employee, Virginia Beach.
Thank you.
Yeah, the pay is indicator that I am part-time, not the hours. Hey, but once again, welcome one, welcome all. You know, at this point, public comment, I understand nobody signed up. Is anybody here for public comment? Okay, that being said, we'll move on to the minutes. Does anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, that being said, can we move for approval of the minutes? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, can we have a voice vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, moving on. At this point, we're going to go on to item number 5, which is Regional Connector Study Phase 3 Public Engagement. And please take that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Lorna Parkins from the consultant team today with us, and she's going to give us a brief overview of the public engagement plan that we have used for the Regional Connector Study. Lorna?
Okay. Thank you, Camelia. Pardon for my hesitation. I have one sort of combined presentation for the meeting today, so I'll dive right in. All right. Thank you. Let me just check with Camelia. Is it okay if I start with the synopsis of the RCS study?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I think we have number 5 and 6 together. So Lorna is going to do one presentation for both items, and she will get to the public engagement during her presentation.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so with that in mind, the agenda for the presentation that I'll move through is a synopsis of the Regional Connector Study, the technical work for which is now complete. And then I'm going to report on our final public engagement, and then touch on the Phase 3 technical guide, which is a document that is out for review currently that summarizes our technical work in the last phase of the project, and then we'll close with action items and next steps. So I want to begin with just a recap of the whole study, and this does cover the agenda item in terms of mentioning what we have done for public engagement throughout the study as well. So this study has had 3 phases. If you've been here from the very beginning, we go back to 2018. In phase 1, we really had a focus on engaging the public at that time. In that we did a scientific survey with over 1,600 responses and 32 stakeholder interviews to really get a base of public and stakeholder input at the beginning of our process to understand perspectives and concerns that should be addressed in the study as we move forward. We also did an existing conditions report at that time and started working with our tools, the travel demand model in particular, to move forward in the later phases where we've done quite a bit of modeling. Phase 2 began right around the same time as COVID. And in that time frame, we prepared our scenario models and tested out the scenarios. These are the regional greater growth scenarios that we've used to kind of serve as a stress test on the evaluation of different transportation investments for the region. And then we also spent some of that time looking at the alternatives. Field trips were made to some of the key facilities in the region, including the Craney Island and the Naval Fuel Depot. And we also had public engagement, virtual public engagement at this time during COVID. Phase 3 started at the beginning of 2022. And in this time period, we really did update and refine our corridor segments. I'll talk more about that in a moment. We moved towards the tiering recommendations that really are the culmination of this study. We developed draft tiering recommendations. We took those out to the public, and we did what we're calling kind of a stress test on those recommended tiers for our segments to determine if they hold up as our recommendations under some different assumptions about the future. So the work that we've completed most recently, and as you've been engaged as a joint committee to kind of walk through and guide us in, is up on the screen in this graphic, and that's our phase 3 process. We started with a qualitative assessment of the segments that we were examining, and that included looking at permitting issues, looking at constructability issues, and then also looking at project readiness. Based on the qualitative analysis, we move forward into quantifying project costs and also starting to use our models to look at congestion impacts and also economic impacts of the different project segments. And at this point, one of the most important things that we did was really bringing those segments up to date. We looked at the segments that we started with were from the 2016 supplemental EIS for harbor crossing alternatives. At this time, we looked at new developments like the Hampton Road Sanitation District pipeline that led us to alter the location in our study of the I-664 widening. We also looked at the concerns that were brought out in the stakeholder engagement about facilities like the Navy Fuel Depot, and we realigned the Virginia 164 connector to take that into account. And then based on the City of Portsmouth's input, we've spent a lot of time looking very carefully at the Virginia 164 alignment, taking a close look at how much of that could really take place towards the center where you find the rail alignment. And in our evaluation, we largely widened it to the outside and took, again, a close look at what is really feasible, how much would that footprint take, and what are the potential impacts there. So all of that is in the documentation that we presented throughout phase 3. And then that insight to those updated alignments went into our cost estimates that we've used throughout the phase 3 analysis. So when we had the qualitative and quantitative assessments, we brought them to this body, and that's the time at which we developed our draft tiering recommendations. From there, we did our stress test, which was running those segments through the different scenarios for the future, looking at Do they still hold up if we have more growth or different growth patterns in the region? And the other part of the stress test was the operational analysis. And that's where we looked at the highway network with managed lanes and determined if that more detailed operational analysis was still showing success with the recommended projects that we had in Tier 1. So those are the steps that we've been through. We're now in step 4, which is final documentation and issuing the final report for the study. The tiering, just so everybody remembers this important component of the study, is designed to allow the study to offer recommendations for which of our roadway segments that we've analyzed are ready to move forward because they appear the most cost effective, because they don't have hindrances to their advancement, and those are Tier 1 recommendations. Segments that do require further refinement, they have hurdles to advancing, perhaps timing issues. For example, I often use the Virginia 164 connector as an example of this because it crosses Craney Island and Craney Island isn't yet complete. So that's an example of a hurdle that creates a low readiness score and one of the factors in recommending segments for Tier 2. And what it means to be in Tier 1 is that these segments are recommended for HRTPO to evaluate in the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan. And I'll dig into that towards the end of the presentation. But what we're doing here is we don't have a shortcut to the fiscally constrained long range plan. What we do at the end of this study is we pass those segment recommendations on to HRTPO for evaluation along with any other recommended project in the in the very rigorous prioritization process that they have for the regional long range transportation plan. A Tier 2 segment is recommended for HRTPO to include in the regional transportation vision plan. So it recognizes that there are elements of regional need in those projects, but they are not recommended for consideration in the 2050 fiscally constrained plan. And that allows you to move those projects forward for study, for example, and to be nimble in that regard if circumstances change. So that's what we mean by Tier 1 and Tier 2. And then again, just to recap, we developed the recommendations based on the qualitative evaluation and the quantitative evaluation, as you see in this diagram. And the recommended segments for Tier 1 are our segment 1A, which is the I-664 widening from College Drive to Hampton, and then the Virginia 164 widening. So those two projects, again, in our analysis, they were the more cost-effective and the most ready to move forward. Tier 2 projects are the 3 connector segments. So Virginia 164 connector, I-564 connector, and I-664 connector. And again, we did our regional analysis, developed these Tier 1 recommendations, and then we put them through our stress test, which was the scenario testing and the traffic operations analysis. In our last meeting presentation to this group, we walked you through those in some detail. And I just want to recap our findings there. Were with respect to the Tier 1 segments, we found, again, even going through and examining them with different assumptions about growth in the region, different assumptions about growth patterns, we found that the Tier 1 segments were the most cost effective in terms of producing benefits relative to their costs, congestion benefits and economic benefits. And we also found in our operations analysis that there were positive results, particularly for the harbor crossings. We really looked closely at both HRBT and the Monitor Merrimack Memorial crossing. Without these investments, you see congestion on those facilities in 2045, and the operational analysis showed that they would operate well with the Tier 1 investments. The Tier 2 segments, our takeaway from the stress test is that when we looked at the greater growth scenarios, we did see that the benefits of those crossing segments, the ones you see in green, red, and orange on the map, those had more benefits if the region grows faster. And especially if the region grows with a pattern where more of the economic growth is focused around the harbor and generating more harbor crossings. So that was a key finding because that sort of aligns with recommending those projects for the regional vision plan, it recognizing that there is a need, especially if the region begins to grow faster. So that's the recap of our findings, and we took that information to our final public engagement events. We held those just over the summer. We had 3 pop-ups and 4 in-person open house meetings, and then we also held an online open house. And it was summer, and not many people came in person, but what we did to help bolster our participation was we sent over 17,000 postcards out about the online open house, and we did get some good participation there. As I just noted, we hosted the pop-ups and the 4 open houses, and then the online open house came after that. With the outreach that we did to generate awareness of the online open house, we got 821 views of our information on the website and 45 additional comment responses. And just to give you a quick set of insights into what we heard from the public engagement, we heard that segment 1A was the top choice for providing the greatest convenience for travel. We heard that people are concerned about congestion in a variety of ways. One that was mentioned in several comments is the truck traffic on Hampton roads and looking for a solution to that. People are concerned about tolls, uncertainty about whether any of future facilities will be tolled. We had a lot of conversations about the managed lanes or the express lanes and how they work as well. There were some comments about the environment. People concerned about marine life and bird life on Craney Island in particular. And then we really had quite a few people who came to the meetings who are interested in alternatives to personal vehicles for travel, asking for more investment in rail, buses, and public transportation. And again, we had a very good conversation about how the express lane network can work with transit vehicles to help improve reliability in travel times for alternative modes of travel. So those were some of the key comments and feedback that we got from our final round of engagement. And I do want to mention that one of the important things that we did in the earlier engagement in this phase of the study, once we had the information about community impacts and permitting issues and environmental impacts, was we had a conversation with the public about the burdens of the projects, how the communities would experience burdens from the projects, the benefits of the projects, and ideas for how to balance the two. And so we had that conversation in the first public meeting. We had our regional symposium with representatives from underserved populations in May, where we furthered that discussion, and then we brought the findings of that conversation to this last round of public meetings. So that's been an important thread in our public engagement as well, that will be fully documented in our final products. So now that we've completed our technical work and our engagement, where we go from here is not only delivering the final reports for the study, but also, as we show in this graphic, handing off these recommendations to HRTPO. So in the upper right corner of this diagram, this is a diagram about the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan. In the upper right, you have the box of regional studies and efforts that produce recommendations to be considered in the Long Range Transportation Plan. So that's where our Tier 1 segments would go. They would then, along with all other recommended projects, go into the process of project prioritization. And if they make it to the bottom of the funnel, then they would be part of the fiscally constrained Long Range Transportation Plan. So that's an if. The remainder of our recommendations, which are the Tier 2 recommendations, would go directly into the Regional Transportation Vision Plan, which is the unfunded portion of the plan. So that's really the handoff that we're making at the end of our study. And the products that we're delivering are twofold. So one component is the tiering recommendations themselves, and that's what we're handing off to the HRTPO process. And then we also have the full record of our study itself. That includes our whole process record, all of our committee meetings, webinars, public engagement summaries. That's all being stored on our website, and we'll work with HRTPO to find a permanent home for all of that information. We also have technical documentation of each phase. And again, so we had a technical guide from phase 2 that explains all the ins and outs of how we developed our scenarios. And then for phase 3, the document that you're reviewing right now is the detailed information and summary findings of everything that I just talked about in the last 10 minutes. And then we also include our refined segment concept drawings. So when you get this presentation from the website or HRTPO, those are live links. But what we did in your handout is I also placed the actual written out web links for each of those so that you're definitely able to go look at all of these items. The technical document was sent out on September 1st from HRTPO, but want to make sure you know the drawings are also available. And the technical report itself includes all of the things you see on the screen here. So it's got the detailed information from our qualitative analysis that we did back in 2022. All of that information was presented to this body in detail. We received comments on it, and those comments and responses to them are also included as one of our appendices to that document. Then the document also includes our step 2 quantitative analysis, lots of bar charts for those of you who like such things, and then the tiering recommendations themselves. And then finally, this document includes the results of our stress test analysis. There's a summary of our public engagement that will be updated to include our final public engagement in the final version of that. And then most of the document is technical appendices. There's just a great deal of information, including tables of traffic volumes for different segment scenarios that we looked at, and all of the qualitative analysis is in there as well. So that's what we've sent out to you. And so there's an action item on the agenda that's on this screen, and then I'll circle back after the committee asks any questions and considers this action to just mention what the next steps are. So that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Boy, that was a good report. No questions. There you go. I think at this part, Bob, and we're talking about this point where we talk about a potential deferral.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and committee members, if I may. First, I would like to ask if we could recognize, I know Portsmouth City staff is here. Mayor Glover sends his regrets he couldn't be with us today, but I had a conversation just about a little bit of an hour before the meeting with Mayor Glover, that perhaps we'll let Portsmouth staff express some of their perspectives, and then I can follow up on the conversation I had with Mayor Glover for the committee's consideration.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure.
Right, so the mayor sent over a statement. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read the statement from the mayor. Good afternoon. The City of Portsmouth appreciates our opportunity to participate in the Regional Connector Study as part of the steering committee and the working group. The energy and efforts put forth in this study will set the goals and priorities for the future of transportation in the region and for the citizens of Portsmouth. As such, we are disappointed with the quality of the responses provided over the course of the study to the concerns expressed by the City of Portsmouth as they relate to the impacts to its citizens associated with the VA 164 widening and the VA 164 connector project. The City of Portsmouth has significant reservations about the information provided and what appears to be a disconnect in how the study represents the potential impacts of these projects on our residents. We look forward to meeting with the TPO chairman and the consultant to discuss our concerns and these issues prior to finalizing the draft report for this study. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for those comments. And I just wanted to reaffirm what the staff's expressed. Mayor Glover is requesting that before this committee, the joint policy committee and working group take any action. He's requesting a working meeting with myself. We would like to have Kevin Page engage in that as well. The Michael Baker consultant team, and of course the Portsmouth staff to go through and restate Portsmouth's concerns. That would give Michael Baker the opportunity to indicate how those questions have been addressed in the study, but most importantly, then give our host city the opportunity to tell us how that wording can be strengthened to best reflect their needs and their concerns. So Mayor Glover would request deferral on any vote today. But from speaking to the mayor, he's interested in this meeting happening very quickly. And what he and I talked about is if that meeting can happen quickly and we can give some revisions in that document, we would then be able to employ, if this group would desire, perhaps in early November, we could do a virtual meeting of this group and give you a report on any follow-up. And then allow us to stay right on schedule. So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to follow up on the staff's comments and let you know about the conversation Mayor Glover and I had just a short time ago.
And thank you, Mr. Crum, and Mayor Glover and I did have a discussion too, and he did request a deferral. But it's really my true belief that we're looking to remove the barriers to success on this. Find out what the problems are, nip them in the bud, and come up with a win-win situation for everybody. So with that being said, do I have a motion for the deferral?
Before the motion, can I ask a
Oh, yeah,
question?
please.
Because I guess I'm a little bit confused. If we go back, and it might have been 1 or 2 years ago, when we were looking at this and we were looking at the 164 widening or 164 widening, Portsmouth was split because there's another gentleman here who's representing your interests who was against it because he talked about, I wouldn't say environmental justice issues, but he was concerned about an impact that would be negative on this one particularly African American community. And yet I think the vote at the time was to include, I think, the widening with the third crossing, or what do I want to say, coming out of what's the name of it now? Craney Island? Yeah, Craney Island. I think all that was a part of this effort to get that all included. But then the next time, it went the other way. And so the gentleman who was against the widening seemed to represent Portsmouth's position, and Mayor Glover, I think, went with that. So now I'm confused as to the stance on this widening. Are you for it? Are you against it?
So we understand the significance of these projects to the region. What we're trying to do in our communication is understand the full impacts to the citizens of Portsmouth as these projects move forward. We know that these projects likely aren't going to go away. And so we're trying to understand them to the fullest because we have to take these projects out to the citizens and get feedback. And based on the comments that we've provided and the feedback that we've got back from the group, we don't feel that we can take these projects in their current form forward to the citizens because we don't fully understand how our comments have been addressed. And so we just need to have an additional conversation, have some additional clarification moving forward.
Okay, no problem there. I mean, I don't mind the additional conversation, but I'm just trying to get my own clarification today.
Yeah.
But so I will move for deferral.
Okay, we have a move. Is there anybody other want to make a comment? Okay, do we have a second? Okay, let's do a voice vote. All in favor of the deferral, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And I think, a point of clarification of this is just to, help Portsmouth with their population, come to an understanding of the impacts of what this is going to be doing. So I think this is time just to take and do an informational process. And I think inevitably this might help the overall process as we get to yes. I think that's important. Bob?
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you to the committee for your consideration. A couple of things. So what the mayor and I talked about, we will actually reach out to the city team next week and schedule that meeting. I know it's something the mayor is very serious about happening fairly quickly. So we'll set that up with our consultant team. Obviously, we're going to align schedules. So that might take us a few weeks to get that set up, but we'll work to do that. I know that, and then that will give us the ability to look at how we've responded, but most importantly, how to document what the city wants to see in there to reflect their concerns. Important to keep in mind that we're not at a design study, right? We're not an environmental study yet, as my VDOT partners would know a lot more about, but we are at an important planning study. And this is the time for us to identify those issues, both pro and potential concerns that need to be considered with each of the alignments, so that when we do get to those next stages of environmental and design and Dale and your long range plan work, that these comments, these concerns will be memorialized in an official document. So we do want to be certain that we're as accurate and complete as possible. And, I appreciate Portsmouth spending their time with us on that, to make certain we have the information reflected in a way that they're most comfortable.
And Bob, thank you. And I think the most important thing is that as we're looking as a regional connector, when one segment connects to others or multiple things, that everybody is in alignment and agreement and understanding about what's going on. So, I think this extra time might, in the long run, be a very valuable thing.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, the other thing is we've made so much progress on this. I mean, landing on improvements to Merrimack Memorial Bridge Tunnel as the next step. We've learned an awful lot about these alignments. We're continuing to learn. I know the port has provided good input into this process, and so just getting all of our partners to have the input, is going to be important as we move forward. So, our hope would be that we could meet with the port, we can work through that wording and that documentation, and then, as I mentioned, we could call you together after that in a virtual meeting and give you a report on how those conversations.
That's outstanding. Thank you. Great conversation. Most appreciated. Okay, moving on to item 7 in the agenda. You have a attachment of the RSC diary of key decision points. This is for your information. Okay, item number 8. Any other areas of interest that anyone in the may have? Okay, I believe that we're up to adjournment.
Yes, Camelia, anything else from your perspective?
No, we're good to go. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Oh, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. See you next time.